Imagine stepping onto the court, the crowd roaring your name, yet knowing the game is already rigged, your every move scripted by powerful men in the shadows. Tonight, you'll discover how fame, debt, and betrayal collide in a battle where one wrong choice can destroy a career or a life. This isn't just basketball, it's a war for freedom. Stay with me till the end, because what you're about to hear will change how you see the game forever. And before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's expose this together. The arena glowed like a cathedral of steel and neon, its rafters humming with the restless energy of thousands of voices waiting for the first whistle. On the surface, it was just another night in the Continental Basketball League, the Northside Falcons facing the Harbor City Titans in a matchup that promised fast breaks and high drama. But beneath the polished hardwood, behind the banners and flashing scoreboards, something darker stirred. The locker rooms, usually sanctuaries of sweat and ritual, had become breeding grounds for secrets, deals, and betrayals hidden beneath the jerseys. In the Falcons' locker room, the air was thick, not just with the scent of liniment and nervous anticipation, but with silence. Players spoke in clipped sentences, avoiding each other's eyes. Everyone knew something was off, but no one dared to say it aloud. At the far corner, Marcus Hale, the team's star guard, laced his shoes with meticulous care, his face a mask of calm that fooled no one. Rumors had been circling for weeks. Strange late-night meetings, unfamiliar faces waiting outside the training facility, and whispers of debts owed that went beyond what a paycheck could cover. The coach tried to rouse his men with the usual talk of pride and hustle, but his voice rang hollow. He sensed it too, the invisible weight pressing down on his players. A single word, fixers, had crept like smoke into every conversation. These shadowy figures, never named but always feared, were said to walk among the athletes, blending into the background while pulling invisible strings. They offered promises of wealth, protection, or freedom from crushing personal troubles. But their deals always carried a price, the purity of the game itself. As tip-off neared, Marcus felt a hand on his shoulder. It was his teammate, Jalen Ross, his closest friend on the squad. Jalen's voice was barely a whisper. "They're watching tonight. Don't mess this up." The words chilled Marcus more than the icy towel around his neck. He knew exactly what Jalen meant. This wasn't about winning anymore. The score had already been written, carved in the quiet conversations of men who would never set foot on the court. Yet, despite the heaviness in his chest, Marcus couldn't ignore the roar of the crowd echoing through the tunnel. They wanted a show, a war played out in dunks and jump shots, a chance to lose themselves in the rhythm of the game. He wondered if they could feel the tension, if they could sense the betrayal laced into every dribble and pass. And as the team rose to march onto the court, Marcus caught his own reflection in the polished floor tiles. A man wearing the Falcons' colors, but carrying a secret heavier than any jersey. The buzzer called them to the stage, but Marcus knew the real game had already begun. The crowd would see only basketball. He would feel the chains tightening. Long before the crowd rose to its feet for the opening tip, the outcome of this night had been decided in a dim hotel suite 2 blocks from the arena. The fixers never met in the open. They thrived in the shadows, preferring places where curtains could be drawn tight and the hum of an ice machine masked low voices. In that suite, just days before the Falcons' clash with the Titans, Marcus Hale sat across from a man who introduced himself only as Mr. Gray. His suit was plain, his smile unremarkable, but his eyes carried a weight that pressed Marcus into his chair. Mr. Gray did not waste words. He spoke in terms of inevitabilities, as though the game itself were just a stage play he had already written. The Falcons would keep the score close, but not too close. The Titans would win by 7. Marcus would miss key free throws late in the fourth. Small details, nothing dramatic, just enough to tilt the scales without raising suspicion. In return, Marcus's long-buried debts would disappear, erased as though they had never existed. Marcus wanted to protest, to shout that he was no pawn, but the fixers always knew the weak spots. They had files thicker than playbooks, filled with every late-night mistake, every reckless loan, every shadow of desperation a player thought he had hidden. And for Marcus, the weight of his past was heavier than any defender. Years ago, before his contract, before the bright lights, he had borrowed from the wrong people to keep his family afloat. What started as survival had spiraled into chains he could never shake. The deal wasn't offered, it was imposed. The fixers didn't threaten directly, they didn't have to. Marcus had seen what happened to players who tried to walk away. An accident, in practice, a contract voided without warning, a career ended by whispers of unreliability. The league never spoke of it publicly, but every athlete had heard the stories. Fear was the fixers' strongest currency, and Marcus was already in debt. When Marcus left that suite, the city lights outside seemed colder, their neon glow no longer promising glory, but casting bars of a prison he couldn't escape. He told no one of the meeting, not even Jalen. But somehow, the knowledge seeped into the team, carried in subtle glances and unfinished sentences. In the locker room, every man suspected, but no one asked. To speak it aloud was to make it real, and reality was the last thing they wanted. Still, Marcus wrestled with a single question as he walked toward the arena on game night. Could he live with betraying the game he had loved since childhood? He had grown up on cracked asphalt courts where the ball echoed like a heartbeat and victory meant pride, not money. Now he stood on the brink of turning that purity into a lie. The first whistle would blow soon, and Marcus would have to decide, obey the script, or break it and face whatever storm the fixers unleashed. The opening tip-off was swallowed by thunderous applause, the kind of roar that made the arena tremble like a living thing. To the fans, it was basketball in its purest form. Falcons versus Titans, a rivalry drenched in years of bitter competition. But for Marcus Hale, each bounce of the ball felt choreographed, each cheer a reminder that he was living out someone else's script. He dribbled down the court, but his hands felt foreign, as though the ball itself knew it was caught in a lie. For the first quarter, Marcus played cautiously, burying his nerves beneath a veneer of focus. He made crisp passes, sank an easy jumper, and wore the mask of a man fully committed to the game. The crowd adored him, chanting his name as though their voices alone could keep him upright. Yet beneath that applause, his mind was calculating. How to miss without looking obvious. How to follow instructions without betraying his own instincts. Every second was a tug-of-war between loyalty to his team and the chains of the deal. On the opposite bench, the Titans seemed unaware of the quiet storm. Their players hurled themselves into the game with reckless passion, crashing the boards, shouting to one another with the raw joy of competition. And Marcus hated them for it. They were still free, still untouched by the hands pulling his strings. Every rebound they claimed, every shot they celebrated, reminded Marcus of the purity he was about to stain. Midway through the second quarter, the first test came. Marcus drew a foul and walked to the free throw line, sweat trailing down his temple like cold rain. The arena fell into that uncanny hush only free throws create. Thousands of voices silenced, all eyes locked on him. He knew the plan. Miss one, make the other. Subtle, believable. He bounced the ball twice, inhaled, and shot. The first swished clean through the net. Too perfect. His heart stuttered. The second arced higher, grazing the rim and rattling out. The crowd groaned, never suspecting that the miss wasn't chance but design. As the game pressed forward, Marcus noticed eyes in the stands. Not fans, observers. Men in plain clothes, watching him with unnerving stillness, their gazes cutting through the chaos like blades. The fixers were here, ensuring their investment was protected. Every decision Marcus made, every pass, every stumble, was under surveillance. The realization tightened around his chest. He wasn't just betraying his team. He was performing for an audience he never wanted. By halftime, the Falcons trailed by 3. The locker room buzzed with tension, players snapping at one another, frustration bubbling to the surface. The coach barked adjustments, but the air was heavy with suspicion, unspoken questions lingering like smoke. Who was responsible for the mistakes? Who wasn't giving their all? Marcus kept his head low, his heart pounding with the knowledge that he was the ghost haunting this room. The second half loomed like a storm on the horizon, and Marcus knew the most dangerous minutes were still to come. The script demanded precision, and the fixers would tolerate nothing less. The third quarter began with a fury, both teams colliding in a blur of sweat and sneakers, but the real battle was unfolding inside Marcus Hale's conscience. Every shot he took felt like a betrayal, every pass a calculation. The Falcons pushed hard, fighting for momentum, Yet Marcus was the hidden fracture threatening to split the foundation. He was still hitting shots, still playing like a star, but with each forced turnover, each subtle hesitation, suspicion began to creep into the eyes of his teammates. Jalen Ross noticed first. His connection with Marcus had always been unspoken, built on years of shared battles. But tonight the rhythm was broken. Marcus was a step late, his eyes darting away when Jalen called for the ball. During a timeout, Jalen pulled him aside, his whisper sharp and urgent. "Tell me the truth. What's going on with you?" Marcus shook his head, offering nothing, but his silence said everything. Jalen's jaw tightened, a mixture of fear and betrayal clouding his face. He knew his friend was hiding something, and in a game like this, secrets could sink them all. The Falcons' huddle grew tense. Players snapped at one another over missed assignments and sloppy execution. The coach's voice rose, desperate to restore control, but the unity that once bound the team was unraveling thread by thread. Marcus felt their eyes on him, the weight of their trust pressing harder than any defender. They didn't know the details, but they sensed it, the shadow that followed him onto the court. And that unspoken suspicion poisoned every play, every interaction, until the team's brotherhood cracked under its own weight. Meanwhile, across the court, the Titans smelled blood. They attacked relentlessly, exploiting every gap, their confidence swelling as the Falcons faltered. The scoreboard shifted in their favor, point by point, while Marcus wrestled with his conscience. Was he protecting himself or destroying everyone who had ever believed in him? Late in the third quarter, the tension reached its peak. Marcus fumbled a pass, sending the ball sailing into the hands of a Titan guard who converted it into an easy layup. The crowd groaned, and the Falcons' bench erupted in frustration. Jalen stormed toward Marcus during the stoppage, his voice trembling with rage. "If you're throwing this game, I swear." He cut himself short, but the venom in his tone left no doubt. Trust was gone, replaced by anger and fear. The Fixers' plan was working perfectly, the Titans led by exactly the margin they'd predicted. Yet Marcus felt no relief, only dread. His teammates no longer saw him as their leader, but as a liability, maybe even a traitor. And though the crowd continued to cheer, their adoration only deepened his shame. As the quarter ended, Marcus sat on the bench, staring at the polished floorboards, his reflection warped by the shine. The cracks in the brotherhood were no longer hidden. They were wide, jagged, and irreversible. And the fourth quarter would demand not just his loyalty, but his soul. The fourth quarter began like a slow march toward judgment. Every possession felt heavier, every second stretched into eternity. The Falcons were down by 5, right where the Fixers wanted them. But Marcus Hale's chest was a battlefield, his heart pounding against the chains of obligation and guilt. The crowd roared for a comeback, but Marcus heard only the echo of Mr. Gray's calm instructions. Lose by 7. Miss the free throws. Play your part. On the surface, Marcus looked composed, sweat glistening under the harsh lights, but his mind spiraled. The Fixers' men were still in the stands, their stillness more terrifying than the Titans' full-court press. Their eyes promised consequences far beyond the game. He had 2 choices: follow the script and bury his soul, or break it and invite the storm. The clock ticked, and the ball found its way into his hands. With 3 minutes left, Marcus drove the lane, leapt, and hammered down a dunk that shook the rim. The arena erupted, the Falcons' bench leapt to their feet, and for a brief moment, the chains loosened. He wasn't a pawn. He was a player, the game coursing through his veins like fire. Jalen met his eyes, and though suspicion lingered, there was also a flicker of hope. But Marcus knew he had just committed his first act of defiance. The Fixers' plan wavered. The Falcons clawed back, narrowing the lead to 2. The Titans grew restless, their confidence cracking. Then came the moment of reckoning. Marcus was fouled with under a minute to go, his team down by 3. The script called for him to miss. The arena hushed, thousands of eyes locked on him, the weight of the league pressing against his shoulders. He bounced the ball once, twice, and looked up, not at the rim, but at the Fixers in the stands. For the first time, he didn't see inevitability in their faces. He saw fear. The first free throw swished through cleanly. Gasps rippled through the stands. The second arced high, kissing the net like silk. Tie game. The crowd exploded, their roar shaking the rafters. Marcus had broken the script, shattered the Fixers' control in the most public way possible. The final possessions blurred in chaos. Jalen intercepted a pass, the Falcons surged ahead, and the buzzer finally sounded, not as an end, but as a reckoning. The Falcons had won. The arena thundered in triumph, but Marcus felt none of it. He saw only the men in the crowd, their expressions no longer calm but seething. He knew what awaited him beyond the lights, beyond the cheers. In the locker room, his teammates celebrated wildly, but Marcus sat alone, drenched in sweat, staring at the floor. He had chosen the game, chosen loyalty, but at a price he had yet to pay. The Fixers would not forgive. They never did. And so, beneath the echo of victory, Marcus felt the silence of something darker approaching. The final buzzer had sounded, but the true game, the dangerous one played in shadows, was only just beginning.